There was an earthquake in the Bay Area this morning, in case you missed it. In section KK of UC Berkeley's Memorial Stadium, on the south side rim, is an offset expansion joint covered with a piece of metal. It's not just a small crevice, but a somewhat tall, thick gap that can be seen from the opposite side of the stadium, where there is also another gap. This crack, and many others similar to it in the East Bay cities, spanning from Richmond to San Jose, are subtle reminders that one day, all hell will break loose along the East Bay hills. The diagonal crossing of Memorial Stadium marks what many geologists consider to be California's most dangerous earthquake fault, the Hayward Fault. The San Francisco Bay Area is transected by a series of subparallel faults that accommodate the relative motion between the Pacific and North American tectonic plates. Such faults in the San Andreas Fault System include the San Andreas, Calaveras, Concord Green Valley, Grenville, Rogers Creek, San Gregorio, and finally, the Hayward Fault. Each fault accounts for 1/5 of the San Andreas Fault System's plate motion. Envision I'm stepping on the Pacific Plate side of the Hayward Fault in this clip. The exact location of the Hayward Fault is still being researched, so in this clip, I'm pointing at an approximate fault location. I'm standing on the oceanic Pacific Plate, which is moving northwest at a speed of about 7 to 11 centimeters per year. The other side of the fault is the continental North American Plate, which is moving southwest at a speed of 2.3 centimeters per year. Now, back to the HayWired scenario. According to the United States Geological Survey, abbreviated as the USGS, the HayWired scenario depicts a scientifically realistic earthquake sequence and its cascading effects that all starts with a magnitude 7.0 earthquake on the Hayward Fault. When the Hayward Fault last ruptured in 1868, almost 140 years ago, the Bay Area looked much different than it does today. The 1860 census counted approximately 260,000 people in the entire Bay Area region. Because of poor structural engineering methods, unreinforced masonry buildings were extensively damaged or wrecked. It's known as the Great San Francisco Earthquake, one of the most damaging earthquakes in California's history, killing 30 individuals. It was a magnitude 6.8 earthquake. Some of the Bay Area's poorest neighborhoods are just a BART ride away from the region's richest. In some cases, they're just a single stop away. According to the map, the Pittsburgh Bay Point line has some of the richest residents, with the median household income near Rockridge, Orinda, and Lafayette all in the six figures. Only 2 stops away from Rockridge is the poorest spot on the map, 12th Street/Oakland City Center, where the median annual income is reported as $15,000. Even when the houses survive, neighborhoods don't just heal. People will keep leaving heavily damaged areas in voluntary displacement for 3 understandable reasons. 1. They can't afford to stay. Their jobs fail, their money runs out, rent rises too high. 2. They can't stand to stay. Roads and transit and water are down for months and perhaps longer. Schools and shelters shut down. Aftershocks drive them nuts. 3. They don't have to stay. They're young, they're mobile, they're ready to go somewhere better. Voluntary displacement was a notable factor after the 1994 Northridge earthquake, when neighborhoods turned into ghost towns as people kept moving out. In New Orleans, it was even worse after Hurricane Katrina. And it will be a big consideration in East Oakland, where so many residents already have vulnerability factors, like low income, language problems, youth and old age, and lack of education. In the scenario, impacts and destruction are magnified by a cascade of hazards. 800 people die and 18,000 more are injured. 2,500 people need to be rescued from collapsed buildings and 22 others are trapped in elevators. 77,000 to 152,000 households could be displaced. There will be water loss spanning from 6 weeks to 6 months. After a natural disaster strikes, there is a demand for natural resources, most of which won't be readily available for days or weeks. Severe shortages of first aid kits, food, water, energy, telecommunications, and transportation are just a few of the services that rely on natural resources such as natural gas, wood, agriculture, and H2O. What will happen to those living in poverty-stricken areas? The San Francisco Community Health Needs Assessment, released in 2019, states, SFHIP recognizes that all San Franciscans do not have equal opportunity for good health, and we are committed to eliminating health disparities and inequities by working together to achieve health equity for all. Families who can afford health care and the insurance that follows will be relieved, while families who can't, won't be aided as common and will be in debt. Similarly, as cities lose energy through power lines and water sources, poorer cities will suffer the costs that come with more demand from natural resources and the availability of them. Income tends to result in beneficial resources, like good schools, safe neighborhoods, and the ability to avoid health hazards.
Hi, my name is Timothy Smithauer. I'm from Fairfield, California, and I'm a student at UC Berkeley. I did see it for the fires. I'm not necessarily from like a super poor neighborhood, but I'm definitely not from a rich one. So I could tell the aid that people were getting from people like Eastridge, Rancho, the people on the hills, is very like extreme. Like the fire department was very focused on protecting the property of homes and neighborhoods of those places. Compared to mine, I wasn't the last priority in my town. Like there was definitely people who got less than what I did, but I definitely saw that we were like getting like the scraps, you know, like during the fire was about like, I could literally see the flames like in front of my house. Like there were flames on the hills and stuff. And even in that moment, there was like almost no firefighters or anything in our area. Meanwhile, when the fires were first starting, the fires were like several miles away from the houses in Eastridge and Rancho and on the hills. But all those areas were flooded with firefighters, like 24/7, protecting the houses, like doing all this stuff. But for mine, it was like they were just waiting for the fire to come to my house if it did, and they would like blow it out with the water, but they're not like taking precautions as much as they would for the other neighborhoods. So that's what I experienced personally.
How can we mitigate these persistent issues? In general, we can start off by doing the following. Duck, cover, and hold on when you feel shaking. Download the MyShake app on your phone, which detects earthquakes before the shaking reaches people far from the epicenter. Make an emergency kit, followed by an emergency follow-up plan with contact numbers and addresses. Put heavy items on lower shelves. Retrofit buildings with cross braces and base isolators. From a societal standpoint, we can start off by changing our mindsets and spreading our ideas. Understand the reality of disasters for people of color and low-income residents. We need to be brave and accept that minorities face persistent shortages of relief. Protest in a safe manner. Educate students in the classroom. Apply these ideas in everyday life. Speak directly to the government to create stricter rules on natural disaster aftermaths. Evidently, racial and wealth disparities were and still are structural determinants for emergency and recovery response. Whenever the next Hayward earthquake occurs, they'll continue serving as significant negative factors in life and death situations. Being in earthquake country, the occurrence of earthquakes cannot be predicted, even with early warning systems, which has resulted in communities not being adequately prepared for the impact of a major seismic event. We don't want to go over a year without electricity like Puerto Rico did after Hurricane Maria. We don't want to see certain races and wealth levels being treated with more care than others. We don't want a statistical repeat of past aftermaths of natural disasters. For most of us, this kind of work is above our pay grade, but it's within our horizon of concern. We can do what citizens do: listen, learn, and lobby our public servants. Remember, back then, about 30 people died. However, today there are 1 million more people living in the affected areas. Do the math and pay attention this week.